Hi, this is Cheryl back with you from Farmhouse, Frugally, and I would like to take these winter blues and turn them into robin's egg blue. I found this sign, really nice quality, heavy wood, has the hook in it, beautiful piece of wood, honestly. But it has these words already on it. And so, as much as I like to be home, I want to use this wood for something else. So, I am starting with this spectacular paint color that is a Williamsburg paint color called Dressing Table Blue. I love it. It is my idea of robin's egg blue. My husband happened to get this for free at the dump on the good table. Full pint. I think the person probably bought it, took it home, put a little tiny bit up somewhere and decided this wasn't the color they wanted, and this is exactly the color I wanted, so it was meant to be. So I am going to start by just covering this entire thing with this gorgeous color. And I am sorry, I do not remember where I got these absolutely spectacular napkins. They are perfect for this. The coloring in them is just so gorgeous. So I am just going to start with half a napkin, and I'm just going to take some paintbrush and some water and just sort of get most of the white above the flowers off, just tearing that organically, and then taking the second ply. This is a 2-ply napkin, and I'm going to take that off so that I can only use the part with the florals. Now, I would like this flower napkin to really pop on this particular color, so I am going to start by painting the back of the napkin with white paint. And you do have to do this kind of slow and delicately so you don't rip that. And I want to make sure that this is good and dry, which took probably a good hour. This is acrylic. Then I took out this sweet little bunny mold that I got, a year or two ago, and I'm going to just put some cornstarch in that. And I'm also going to use a little tiny bird. I think I got years ago on Temu when Temu first came out. And I am going to just put some cornstarch in those and fill those with some clay. I am using Model Magic clay. Any clay will work, but I do like the fact that it doesn't crack and it does stay pliable for quite some time. It's almost like fluff, marshmallow, what do you call those little bunnies for Easter? Now, once that napkin is dry, I'm going to just take some Mod Podge and put that on the bottom half. Lay that napkin down. I am going to take a little ball of cling wrap to help me so that I don't tear that, and then just finish the top section of that. And then the thing about Mod Podge is it does have a little bit of a different finish, so you do want to finish the entire painted section so that you don't have two different sheens going on here. I went over the whole thing. I let that dry, and then once that was dry, I took my finger sander and just sanded off any of the edges and the bottom there so that that would be finished. And I already love the way that this is looking. I did decide to go over the white around the flowers with a little bit more of that blue-green so that I could have a little less white showing. And then I will have to, of course, add some more Mod Podge once that dries. Now I'm going to take these sweet little bunnies and I am going to go ahead and give them some white chalked paint. They're already white and you can just leave them, but I do like to add paint. It does reduce any cracking if there is going to be, although I have to be honest, and all the times I've used this clay, it has yet to crack. And now I'm going to just go ahead and use some of that quick and thick glue and add those where I want them on this. Then I put both of those bunnies down, and then I added one little bird up on one of the florals. And I had gone through my stash to see if I had anything else to put in that space at the top. I kept going back and forth as to what I wanted to do on that. I really didn't want to put a word, but I kept thinking, oh, I don't know. It kind of does lend itself. And I happen to have one of these pre-made clay molds that was already done for me. So I thought, well, this is kind of perfect. So I'll go ahead and add that right in the top. And I have this really sweet little wooden box that has little letter stamps in it. And so and I think you can get these on Amazon and other craft stores. I wanted to press into the clay while it was wet, but this was one that I had already made in the past, and so instead I opted to just use an ink pad, and I thought I would try this blue ink. It worked okay, but I didn't think it was quite dark enough. So I will end up highlighting those letters in a little while. Now, before I continue on with this, I do want to take a moment to tell you today's What Would You Make collaboration is being hosted by Brenda and Christine, and their guest host is Emily. I will have their channel links in the description box, as well as the playlist of all the other hosts that have joined in, so make sure you check that out. Now, I am not a fan of gold in my home. I have a lot more silver, and so I thought, especially with the blues and the pinks, that silver would look better. So I took out a silver paint pen to go ahead and highlight on the edges to make this look like a silver frame. Unfortunately, it did leak a little more than I wanted it to. I should have just used some rub and buff. So I do have to go back and dry brush some white over that afterward. So once I get that on, I feel like it is just a little bit too dark. Here, I wanted to make sure that I had a little bit of the blue-green color in the bunnies, but I didn't want a lot. So I mixed some clear wax with a little bit of that paint together, and then I am going to brush all over the bunnies. And then once I have that, I am going kind of in the crevices and all the little bits and pieces of the mold to make that pop. I'm just going to go ahead with a paper towel and just wipe away the bulk of what's on the top, so the wax will preserve it and the color will stay in the creases. And then for the bird, I decided to just go ahead and add a little bit of dark wax. And then to finish this off, I want to go ahead and dry brush with some white paint over the silver to pull back some of that silver. And here it is in my foyer, getting me ready for spring. Even though we have many inches of snow and ice and sleet this week, and it has been in the 3 to 10 degree range, and we have a week of less than 0 coming up, or at least several days. So, oh well, I can hope and dream. If you're enjoying these, please hit the like button. It helps me to know what to continue doing for this channel. Item number 2 is a round covered pantry box that had been left on the good table at the dump. Evidently, it had held some olives, and when they were finished with it, they opted not to do anything with it, so good for me. That was left behind, and of course, it is absolutely perfect for me. That came from Crate and Barrel, and so I just started with my heat gun and took those labels off first. And then I cleaned that really well with just some Dawn dish detergent and a scrubber. And then once that was fully dry, I took that same gorgeous Williamsburg dressing table blue. I don't know how old this can is or whether you would ever be able to find this color, but oh, it is just so spectacular. I'm going to keep using it. I just love it so much. So I am going to go ahead and coat the entire top and bottom, not the inside of this box, and it pretty much covers in one good coat. And then once that's dry, I wanted to take my finger sander and distress a little bit, especially around the edges and the little detail, and to remove the paint from the little brass tacks on both sides. I just went back and forth as to whether I wanted to stamp on this box, and I may end up doing that in the future. I do have some lovely new stamps, and so I didn't want to make it primarily spring because it does work well in my entryway and I could use it all year round. So I opted for now just to go ahead and give it some dark wax, but I didn't want it to be real dark, so I covered the entire thing with clear wax first, brushing that on and then wiping that back with a cloth. That way, when I add the dark wax, it will be easier to move around and it will not be quite so dark. So I just wanted to focus primarily on the edges, and that is all I decided to do with this for now. And again, I may very well go back and do something a little bit more in the future. I mean, obviously the possibilities are endless. I could do molds, I could do transfers, I could decoupage, I could stamp. I love it when there's such a beautiful blank slate. But sometimes I just want to leave something alone for a little bit and give it a thought. And here it is in my entryway, and it is dressed for spring. So that is definitely how I want it to look right now. And the color on the wall in there is only slightly darker than this color. So it ended up being just a perfect complement to the other items that I have started to put in this room as I start to decorate my home for spring. No matter what the weather's like, I absolutely love spring. So I am so looking forward to that. Now that takes me on to this piece that I got at the Goodwill bins for probably cents because it weighs next to nothing. And I opted to take this. I had already done this in a video back probably last spring. I don't even know. It is one of those fryer basket things, and it has this handle on it, and I had wanted to darken it up and I never did. It's a bamboo handle, so I decided this is the time, especially with that darker piece of wood, to go ahead and get that covered with some dark wax. And I also cut down some of the brassy gold color of the basket itself. This is not vintage. It's obviously newer. I don't know if anyone ever used it. It was at the dump. And so I just went ahead and put that on and then wiped that back. I had put a basket in it in last year, and I decided to go ahead and, not a basket, a nest. Kind of like a basket actually. And so I just filled that little basket nest with some green sisal and a little bit of florals and some eggs. And I had this bird, but I don't know, it just wasn't sitting right. I think that its tail was preventing it from sitting right. So I went through my stash to see what else I had, and I swapped that out for something a little bigger and a little bit in that blue green gray color, and added that and just played with that, added some little feathers in, and once I had that looking the way I wanted it, I popped that right into the little fry basket section. I have seen these at other places, so I think they're pretty easy to come by, those little fry baskets. Now this gorgeous garland I got at the Goodwill bins, and it doesn't weigh anything, so I paid next to nothing for it. And I love it as is, but I thought, man, this will be great to cut up as well. And since it was so inexpensive, it is cheaper than going out and spending $15 or $20 on a garland. Took a little bit to get the glue to stick since I had waxed that. Once I had some of that climbing up, I added some little white pretty florals that I had in my stash because there was a lot of stick showing, and that was, I think, one of the things I didn't like about it when I had started working on it last year. So once I had that floral on there. That was pretty much what I wanted, and I thought it was perfect to hang on that piece that I got at the Goodwill bins, because it had a little black wrought iron hook on the top of that piece of wood that came with it, and it fit right into the hole on the top of the stick. So that was a perfect marriage, and I love the way these wooden items came out. And then that takes me on to the next one. And someone had left this little wooden crate free at the dump, probably right after Christmas time. And I went ahead and repaired a broken slat with some of that glue, hammered in some of the loose staples or little nails. And then once I had that repaired, I let that sit overnight until that was completely dry. I tried to get the handle off myself. It had quite a bit of nails and staples in it, but then I opted to wait on that and paint it first because I could use the handle. So I took the same color that I've been using and I mixed it with white to make it a little bit lighter for this project. I also wanted to use the napkin that I used in the first project here, but I wanted it to be a little bit different. So I'm going to mix this together and paint the entire thing. I'm not going to make you watch me paint it. Then I wet a rag and I went ahead and wet distressed some areas around primarily the edges and pulled back some of that so that the wood tone that I had in this could show through here and there. And that's personal preference, but I happen to like things looking a little more vintage, a little more distressed. And sometimes when you're working on a piece that is a lot of one color, it is nice to have something to break that color up. Now this time I'm going to use the rest of the napkin and I'm going to peel away, of course, and only use the top. But I am not going to paint it white. This is going to go directly onto the blue color so that it will not be quite as vibrant, which is good. I want this to be a little bit more vintage looking. And so I'm just going to hold one end. I'm going to just paint each of the slats with the Mod Podge and then press gently down onto the slats. And I'm not going in between the slats because I want to cut away. I've done these before and I really love the look of the cutaway areas where it's already slatted. I think these little wooden baskets are pretty easy to come by as well, and often they're kind of ugly, so I think that just adding some paint and adding a napkin, which costs next to nothing, can really elevate a piece like this. So hopefully you will be able to do one of these for yourself. And I would just say that just work real gently with the napkin so you don't tear it, although tearing it isn't the end of the world because it is kind of a vintage feel. Let it dry completely, and then once it's dry, take a finger sander or a piece of sandpaper, or what really works well on these is like an emery board, and remove the excess napkin. This part was by far the most time consuming. It does help to put a coat of Mod Podge over the top of the whole thing before you do this step. I actually opted to do that after I had sanded it, which did give me a couple of little tears. Again, okay by me, but if you really want it to look perfect, you want to Mod Podge over the top of the napkin, let that dry thoroughly, and then go ahead and cut away and sand away the extra pieces. And then we removed that handle, and my hubby was kind enough to cut a spindle that I have had in my stash for quite some time. We got a crib, piece of a crib, a broken crib at the dump, and we had taken the spindles off of it. And so he put that on the top of the basket for me. And here it is in my entry filled with flowers. Oh, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for spring. I am not a fan of winter and I live in New Hampshire, so it is always hard, especially February. But this helps. This helps me to remember that no matter what, spring will come. Another idea for something like this is a gift idea to do maybe some bath products for somebody, maybe a birthday gift or something, or a spring gift, a welcome spring. And this is how it will remain in my bedroom. I love it. So please let me know what you think about today's What Would You Make projects. Thank you so much for stopping by. I would love a comment, and I would love it if you would share and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.